After many years of trying, Microsoft finally has a laptop which can compete directly head-on against the Apple MacBook Air. Meet the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7, powered by the brand new ARM-based Elite chip. It is the 15-inch model which currently costs Rs 157,990 on Amazon for the 16GB RAM and 512GB SSD variant. So the variant I am using right now is the 256GB variant option, which sells for Rs 142,999. Now, if it wasn't already clear that Microsoft and Qualcomm are jointly targeting Apple, the fact that the Surface Laptop 7 is available in two sizes, 13-inch and 15-inch, should make it evident. But still, the question remains, is the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7 really the laptop you should ditch your Apple MacBook Air for? Well, here's my answer. Now, before I begin with the review, we need to understand one thing. As a simple, easy to understand note, you should avoid choosing the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7 over the Apple MacBook Air if you're already in the Apple ecosystem. Matlab, if you already own more than 2 Apple computing devices, be it 2 iPhones, an iPhone and an iPad, or an iPhone and an iMac, a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio, then you should simply not go for the Microsoft Surface 7. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not that the laptop doesn't have enough to offer, it sure does, and having 2 different operating systems on hand is always useful. But here's the thing, being kicked out of the Apple ecosystem kind of sucks even in 2024. Transferring big files is a headache, and even if you use open source apps like LocalSend, the transfer speed is just abysmal. And not just that, but the kind of features that you will potentially miss out on continue to grow with the release of macOS Sequoia. Chalo, with that quick note out of the way, let's take a look at the laptop's design. Now, it looks a whole lot similar to the 15-inch MacBook Air, but in terms of dimensions, it is noticeably thicker. Primarily because the display packs a touchscreen panel and the base also houses a fan, for active cooling of course. Meanwhile, the 15-inch MacBook Air has none of these. Now, upon opening the laptop lid, you'll again be reminded of the 15-inch MacBook Air because everything like the keyboard layout and the tech area also looks very similar to it. But if you look closely, you'll notice one small difference. The keyboard cutout area in the Surface Laptop 7 is not symmetrical on all sides, but it is on the 15-inch MacBook Air. Now, it doesn't make any difference, and most probably it's just a design choice by Microsoft, but it is there. Now, the overall fit and finish of the Surface Laptop 7 is excellent, and it also has a metallic finish to the entire thing as well, which is a very nice thing. You see little to no fingerprints on the surface, and it feels very smooth to touch, and as a result, even while typing with a sweaty palm, you won't face any issues. Now, talking about the keyboard, and it is very comfortable to type on. The keys have decent travel, but the main feature here is the bouncy spring action. Like, your finger will easily bounce from one key to the next, and the overall typing experience feels very good. Now, I have one small complaint with the touchpad though. You see, it is not a physical unit, but instead features a haptic motor underneath it. This mechanism works really well most of the time, but sometimes the touchpad gets stuck, especially when I'm trying to select multiple items by drawing a square. Now, since it is like that, I'm pretty sure that it is a driver issue, so it can be sorted very easily. Now, in terms of I/O ports, Microsoft has done a decent job, but there are some very obvious misses as well. Like, you do have a 3.5mm audio jack, a Type A, 2 Type C ports, and SD card slot, but there is no HDMI slot. Now, granted that this laptop has a better I/O than the 15-inch Apple MacBook Air, but it is certainly not as good as the one on the Asus VivoBook S15 OLED. Now, similar to MacBook Air, this one also has a proprietary port, but you can also charge via the USB Type-C ports. But I personally prefer that the proprietary port is there because it frees up the rest of the Type-C ports for you to attach additional accessories to it. Now, the 15-inch variant of the Surface Laptop 7 also has an outstanding display for both content creation and consumption as well. With a peak brightness of 589 nits, It offers excellent visibility even in bright environments and in well-lit rooms as well. Its color space coverage is also pretty good, covering 136.6% of the sRGB gamut and 96.8% of the DCI-P3 color space, making it ideal for tasks that require precise color representation such as photo and video editing. Additionally, the laptop also has an average delta E of 1.15, meaning colors are reproduced extremely accurately, as values below 2 are considered near perfect. Now, one issue which you will encounter is the presence of a very glossy display, which even at full brightness is unable to overcome reflections. But a good thing which the Surface has over the 15-inch MacBook Air is the 120Hz display, because the MacBook only has a 60Hz panel. Now, I don't need to tell you this, but 120Hz simply feels a whole lot better to use daily. Now, talking about the speakers on the Surface Laptop 7 deliver solid sound quality. They produce clear instrument separation in music and decent bass, making them suitable for media consumption as well as casual listening too.
Life can get long, so honey, if you need to cry, just come share my pillow and rain, go away.
However, I recently tested the Asus ZenBook S14, and compared to that one, the Surface Laptop 7 doesn't offer enough depth and richness. Overall, while the speakers will not blow you away, the audio experience is quite good for a portable machine. Now, performance was one area where I personally was really interested because of two main reasons. Number one, it is using a Snapdragon X Elite chip, and number two, it is using such a version of the Snapdragon X Elite that we haven't tested yet. You see, most X Elite laptops that I have tested so far had the X1E 78100 chip, but the Surface Laptop 7 has the X1E 80100 variant. वैसे तो the only difference between these two chips is that there is dual core frequency boost in the X1E 8100, while there is no such thing on the other chip. So after a week of testing this laptop, here are the results. सबसे पहले तो in Cinebench R23, the Surface Laptop 7 scored 9886 in multi-core performance, beating out the HP OmniBook X14 but still trailing behind the Asus VivoBook S15, which has the quote-unquote slower SoC on paper. But since Cinebench R23 isn't properly optimized for ARM laptops, so I tested Cinebench 2024. But even in that, the laptop only scored 692 in multi-core and 98 points in single-core test. For comparison, this is slower than the Galaxy Book 4 Pro, Asus VivoBook S15 and even the ZenBook S16. Now, the only laptop which it managed to beat is the recently reviewed Asus ZenBook S14 OLED featuring the Intel Core Ultra Series 2 processor, which already has a pretty weak multitasking performance. So by now, it is pretty clear to me that the Surface Laptop 7 is really not performing competitively, either in single core or multi-core test. And that too, despite having a better version of the Snapdragon X Elite compared to the Asus VivoBook S15. But just when I was about to call it, something really weird happened. In Geekbench 6, the Microsoft Surface Laptop 7 just flat out beat the competition, scoring 14305 in multi-core and 2777 in single-core test. And then it hit me. The reason why the more powerful chip isn't performing well is because it is getting throttled. Geekbench 6 runs more quickly compared to Cinebench 2024 and the Cinebench R23. This means that whenever Surface Laptop 7 is put under stress, it is getting throttled. Now, this can be for multiple reasons. It could be to keep the surface temperature under control, or to keep a silent computing experience consistent across various situations, or something else. Because I distinctly remember that even though the VivoBook S15 achieved the highest Cinebench 2024 score, its fan did spin at a very high speed, creating a lot of noise. But over here, it feels like almost silent in all cases. Now, moving on to the SSD speed, the 256GB SSD on board is decently fast. What you're getting is entry-level PCIe Gen 4 SSD speeds, and I don't think there's anything to complain about it over here except the size. But in terms of memory read and write speed, the Surface laptop is one of the fastest laptop out there, even beating out the VivoBook S15 X Elite version by a small margin. Now, although the size of the SSD is just 256 GB, it can be expanded by the user, meaning you can simply pop open the laptop and upgrade to a bigger SSD yourself. And similarly, in terms of memory latency as well, it is one of the fastest laptops that you can buy. Even in terms of battery life, this laptop is a champ. Now, I did not test gaming on this device because gaming on ARM is very erratic at the moment and benchmarks just kept crashing. So instead, I ran a bunch of synthetic GPU benchmarks and it scored pretty similar to other X Elite laptops that we have tested. Now, it is already lower than the Intel Core Ultra 7, the AMD Ryzen AI 9 HX370 and the latest Intel Core Ultra Series 2 CPU, indicating that Qualcomm needs to work on the GPU. So, should you buy the Surface Laptop 7? At a price point of 142,999? Unfortunately, no. Because at this price point, you have so many better options right now. If you want an ARM-powered machine, then go with the Asus VivoBook S15. If you want a premium x86 experience, then look no further than the Galaxy Book 4 Pro. And if you want something with a strong iGPU, then go with the ZenBook S16. That will be your best bet. Now, the only scenario where buying the Surface Laptop 7 makes sense is if you were considering a 15-inch MacBook Air, but you are not a part of the Apple ecosystem. Because in almost every way, be it the build quality, the keyboard, the overall battery life, the throttle performance and the silent computing experience, it is made for a single purpose only, to take on the MacBook, and I can confidently say that it does just that very well. This is me, Yatnesh Dubey. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you guys next time.